this far-right activist court is at it again. So the Supreme Court is set to hear a case that could fundamentally change elections. The case that the Supreme Court hears today brings stakes like no other. In the North Carolina case, the court is being asked to decide whether to drastically expand the authority that state legislatures have over election maps and voting laws. In Moore v. Harper, the Supreme Court will decide whether the North Carolina Supreme Court has the power to strike down the legislature's illegally gerrymandered congressional map for violating the North Carolina Constitution. Now, that case is Moore v. Harper, as we mentioned. And why is this important? Well, let's take a trip down memory lane. Last year, North Carolina's Republican-dominated state legislature passed on a party line vote an extreme partisan gerrymander to lock in a supermajority of the state's 14 congressional seats. That is called rigging the system. Let me break this down. Let me dress this up for you. It is called rigging the system. It is called politicians picking their elected officials politicians picking their constituents instead of constituents picking their elected officials. I want to dress this up for you. It is rigging the game. And so here we go. The gerrymander was so extreme that an evenly divided popular vote would have awarded 10 seats to the Republicans and only 4 seats to the Democrats. The map was a radical statistical outlier more favorable to Republicans than 99.9999% of all possible maps. In other words, these fools had no fear of rigging this thing. And this is the power of legislatures. And that is why, Jackson, we should not sleep on legislatures. We spend so much time focusing in on Congress, which is important, both chambers, the presidency, which is important. But Democrats do not do a very good job at making sure we are running candidates and cultivating candidates that can win state legislatures all across the country. Your thoughts on this case, Jackson?
Well, I mean, the reality is that this is just a desperate attempt to bring societal change to a halt. All it does is erode the separation of church and state and increase authoritarian culture within government. Because I mean, all this does is give more power to the state, which is the antithesis of what conservatives claim to want, at least within their branding and their marketing, from Ronald Reagan on through today. So instead of adapting and trying to push forward policies that are popular, we're seeing this happen with the reversal of Roe v. Wade. Pretty much all the Republicans voted against gay marriage and contraception. They did nothing about the baby formula shortage, nothing about inflation, nothing about infrastructure. Pretty much anything that the country really needs, where jobs really could be created in any type of substantial way, the Republican Party has been against. And so the only way to ensure that they have any type of stranglehold on power is to give more power to the state, because the people don't want them there. So that's the reality.
It is, and the whole notion of states' rights, I mean, this is rearing its ugly head, and we know from a political, social, economic, and just a pure human level or capacity pillars, if you will, that those type of states' rights have never worked for the Black community in particular. Because the United States Supreme Court has ruled that federal courts cannot hear partisan gerrymandering cases, voters contested the map in state court, contending that the map violated the state's constitution's free elections clause, among other provisions. And good on them for standing up and doing that. We really need them to do that. And then here's what the gerrymandering looked like in North Carolina. If we can put up that map of 2020 versus 2022, North Carolina's 2020 House map favored Republicans. I mean, you see a total sea of red. We see 2020 and we see 2022. It got even worse. And this is not because voters were voting necessarily differently. It's because the Republicans that control the legislature in North Carolina used their pen and they rigged this thing in such a way that it really doesn't matter what the will of the people, what the will of the people, what their will is, that the Republicans will continue to control those seats in the legislatures. And if the case advanced by North Carolina's Republican legislative leaders, legislative leaders, the independent state legislature theory could negate a governor's veto in the oversight of courts enforcing the state constitution and cast doubt on citizen implemented initiatives aimed at taking partisan politics out of map drawing and election rules. This is bad, and we all should pay attention to this. This will have a chilling effect on elections all across this country if the Supreme Court rules the wrong way. The Republicans have been working on these plans. So whether it's this, whether it's Roe v. Wade, you name it, they've been working on these types of measures for a very long time. And we, the collective we who believe in what is just, right, and good, we're gonna have to get on our assignment as well.